Secretary Jackie Smith and broadcaster Ian Dale are still with us in the studio. And ahead of a week of strike action, which starts tomorrow, when more than 50,000 rail workers are expected to walk out and join the picket, we're joined by the head of the RMT Union, Mick Lynch. Mick, thank you for coming in. We don't often get you into the studio.
Good morning.
So it's good to have you here with us this morning. Although there would have been a huge collective sigh from a lot of our viewers, particularly about the idea about the strike that is happening tomorrow. Can you just explain where you are in terms of negotiations with regards to the strike and the potential of the strike not happening?
Well, we meet with the companies all the time. We've met with Network Rail and I'm meeting the train operating companies today, but we've not got any new offers from any of the companies that will break this deadlock. They're locked into a policy set by the Department for Transport and the Treasury, and we know there are problems in the government at the moment. But there seems an inability from the people in charge of this country to set an agenda that will allow a resolution to these disputes to develop.
So can we just talk about that? The offer that's on the table, Network Rail say it's a 2-year, 8% deal, no compulsory redundancy guarantee, other benefits and extras, they're on the table. You're saying it's a 4% in the first year, backdated to January, 2% the following year, 2% beyond that. The other thing they're saying is that the redundancies that I know that you're very concerned about, what they're saying is hopefully they will be voluntary. The redundancies will come from people who are willing to take that redundancy. Is that a deal that you've taken to your members?
We've taken it to our members. We had a meeting of 600 shop stewards, as they're called, and they rejected that out of hand. It's actually at 8% over 3 years. And inflation, working class inflation, is probably 15 or 16% at the moment if you take the amount of money that working class people have to spend. And the regular measures of inflation are going to rocket. We could have 20% inflation in the middle of next year, depends how you measure it. It's completely inadequate, but we haven't resolved the issues. Grant Shapps said he was going to cut overtime on the railway. They cannot run the railway today when we're not on strike. Avanti West Coast cannot run its railway. They're completely incompetent, and they're being presided over by a bunch of people who are also incompetent. So the railway's at the point of failure at the moment, and we need a new set of people running the railway, and we need a new deal for the passengers and for the public. All of these companies are extracting profit from the railway right now, massive profits, but they're asking our members to give up their wages and give up their jobs, but they're also asking for the safety standards on the railway to be diluted so that they can achieve more profit and more cost savings. That's an unacceptable formula, and we need a group of people that can change that scenario and get a new deal for everyone who's involved in public transport in Britain.
How is this going to... what's it going to take to resolve this? You've had a talk with the new Transport Secretary, haven't you, Anne-Marie Trevelyan? Is it that kind of discussion that you think will help to resolve this? Well,
I'm hoping that the new Secretary of State can reset the equation. At the moment, we had still got Grant Shapps' legacy, which was one of incompetence. They put down a series of challenges to us that they know we cannot accept. They want to go back to all the disputes about guards we had 5 or 6 years ago, and they want to take us into dispute in every single train operating company, 14 separate companies. They know we cannot accept what they've proposed, so they need to reset their position. Our members are telling us, we don't want to talk about money yet. We want to talk about whether we've got a job and how our lives will be run. Our people, like everyone in this studio, work around the clock. They work a heavy, intensive shift pattern, and they're asking for that, or demanding that gets worse. They're going to shut every ticket office in Britain, and it doesn't matter whether you've got visual impairments, whether you need assistance from staff. They just don't care what the state of the railway's like in the future. They just want to extract more and more profit from it, and it will be at the cost of the ordinary men and women of this country.
Ian, I wonder what your listeners' reaction is to these strikes. Are they more sympathetic towards the position of Mick Lynch and the unions, or are they getting frustrated with the fact that this is still ongoing?
I think normally when you have rail strikes, sort of ordinary people rail against them because they are going to be inconvenienced. But, I mean, Mick did an hour-long phone-in with me a couple of months ago, and it was quite noticeable that there was a lot of public support from the kind of people who you might not automatically would expect to support strikes. So I don't think we should... And I think that's the problem that the train operating companies and the government have got, that there is more public support for this kind of action than there normally is.
And I think the other thing to say, of course, is that it's not just going to be mixed members who will potentially be taking industrial action.
No.
This is a winter when there is a cost of living crisis, when lots of people will be not having real terms pay increases, so the real value of their pay is going down. Their mortgages, if they've got them, are going up. That's going to cause further political problems for the government. And, of course, what we didn't touch on is, at the same time, those people who are the very most vulnerable on benefits, it appears, are also not going to even be having the real value of their benefits maintained.
Well, one of the difficulties, of course, Mick, and it's interesting that Ian's saying that the majority of his viewers, or there certainly was a lot of sympathy towards what you're doing. The strike that you're taking tomorrow is on the Saturday before the London Marathon. Now, the London Marathon is a hugely important event for the British community of charities. £60 million is raised, 45,000 runners, something like 750,000 people turn out. I know people that have already having to struggle now because they were going to come to London on Saturday, spend the night before they do the London Marathon. It's hugely, hugely important, particularly at this landscape, how much these charities need this money. Do you worry that actually taking the action on a day like tomorrow, when it's going to inconvenience so many people who are turning out to try and raise money for incredibly important causes, is actually going to turn that tide because people are going to get frustrated? I was talking to Brian Wood, who's going to be doing 35 marathons in 35 days from Sunday. And he said, Ben, it's absolutely scuppered me for getting to London on Saturday. It's going to be an absolute nightmare now to try and do it first thing on Sunday morning.
Well, we don't want to disrupt the marathon. That's not in our thinking. It's a coincidence.
You will be, though, won't you? I mean, that's the reality.
It will, and we're sorry about that. We don't want to do that, but we have to keep this dispute going. We've been at it for nearly 6 months now, and we haven't got a result. The tide of public opinion, we don't think will turn against us. We're going to have people out on the street through Enough is Enough in 50 separate cities this weekend, supporting the CWU and supporting us. People are really angry about the state of this government. It is a shame that so much charity has to be raised in this society at the moment, that people can't just get on with their lives without having to rely on charity.
But they can't get on with their lives and raising money for charity on this weekend because of the action that you and your
union are taking. But our members
taken.
can't get on with their lives. They've been threatened with mass redundancies. Thousands of our people are threatened with redundancy, and the railway service will be depleted and the services will be diluted if we don't turn around the government policy. So there's a whole wave of anger coming at this government, but they're deaf to everything that they're told. They're deaf to the advice from the civil servants. They're deaf from the opinion from the city. They're deaf from the opinions of working men and women around the country.
Well, but they are wanting to try and stop this, aren't they? Because Kwasi Kwarteng has said that he's going to take action to force transport companies to maintain a minimum level of service.
Yeah,
he's also going
to...
He's going to require you to put the offers that are made to your members to make sure that everyone is in agreement.
And it's the most ridiculous bit of legislation you'll ever hear. So if a company offers me 1.95 today and I put that to a referendum and they come back tomorrow and offer me 1.96, I'll be doing referendums every week. But they won't allow us to vote digitally in dispute ballots. They won't allow us to get on with negotiating freely. They are going to deregulate everything in this country, including health and safety legislation. They're going to take away workers' rights. The only people that will be regulated will be trade unions and our relationship with our members. It's a direct interference in democracy, and it's because they're losing the argument on every front. They will regulate and legislate to make protest illegal, as they are doing with the police bill, and they are trying to make campaigns against poverty in this country illegal. And the best hope of working people is the trade unions. They'll get them a deal, but they want to clip our wings and put us in straitjackets.
Do you think, as far as you're concerned, you know, the general public should just get used to these strikes? Because at the moment it looks like there's not going to be a deal imminent.
No, they shouldn't get used to these strikes. They should demand a resolution and they should demand a change in direction. That's why we'll be out with Enough is Enough, campaigning to end fuel poverty, to end food poverty, to get a better housing system in this country and to tax the rich properly. What have they done? They've lifted the cap on bankers' bonuses and they've said to every millionaire in this country, you will be £55,000 better off next year and in all the years to come, including all of the people, the top people in the railway industry. We've got a chart coming out tomorrow that's saying the chief executives of the railway, all of whom are on over £1 million a year, will be 50 or 60 grand better off because of what Kwasi Kwarteng has done in this last week or so. The people need to be out on the streets and demanding change from this government and, if necessary, a change of government entirely.
There is no doubt, Ian, when you and I doubt that when we see those figures that Mick's talking about with the execs of these rail unions and the benefit they're going to get from Kwasi Kwarteng, and as Charlotte points out, he wants to change the legislation to stop this sort of thing happening, to make sure there's a minimum service. It does feel like they're all working together. You know, you're sitting at home or you work for the unions. You'd be incredibly frustrated to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue against that, really. People are incredibly frustrated at the moment, and it will always come back to what he announced on Friday. And even if he announced a U-turn and said, no, we're not going to do the top rate of tax thing, we're not going to cap bankers' bonuses, they wouldn't get any political credit for that at all, because people would still remember the initial decision. And in fact, it would be worse for them because they would be described as weak for having U-turn. So they are in a pretty difficult position, entirely of their own making.
Well, look, we're going to have to leave it there, aren't we? Thank you all for joining us. Mick, thank you for coming in the studio.
We've got Mick and Ian in the same room, reunited. There you go.
People talking about what's cheered them up. They said having the Mitchell brothers on Good Morning Britain
Oh,
really cheered me up.
Do you know, when people first said that we looked like each other, I looked to see when we were born. Luckily, there is 6 months between us, so there can be no scurrilous rumours about either of our mothers.
Thank you for coming in. It's good to see you guys as ever.